We are, of course, living through a historic moment where the executive branch of the United States government is leveraging a direct assault on civil rights enforcement and so named diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within the federal government, but also in any institutions they can get their hands on. So, how are you all seeing the administration's efforts affect LGBTQ communities and LGBTQ businesses and organizations, especially?
This time last year, I was actually at the White House with our former board chair, Dr. Vivienne Ming, who's a phenomenal trans woman and researcher as well, too, presenting on economic opportunities for the queer community and why people should be investing in us more. We were not invited back this summer to the White House, and I don't expect it was because our invitation was lost in the mail. It is a whiplash, most definitely, and it's something that I think every queer person knows, every entrepreneur knows. But like Martha was saying earlier, how we're hustlers and talk about resilience and lead it too. Like this is nothing new for queer people. The arc bends toward justice. We continue fighting, but for the same reasons that we make better entrepreneurs or really great entrepreneurs, I want to say, we make really great activists and advocates. And the work that we do, even if we're going to be less funded next year because of this administration or because of some of our former partners want to pull back out of fear of retribution from the administration, we're still going to be here and we're still going to be queer and we're still going to fight for economic opportunity for everyone.
Intersectionality right now is another big topic. We're dealing with already, that whirlwind of executive orders that came like in February, and there was a little bit of like breathing easy, well, not breathing easy, but like being able to breathe a little. And like for myself right now, with the whole ice raids happening like literally in my community as we speak, it just amplifies and it really highlights how we need to remember that we are so much more than just the LGBT. And I think that people lose sight that when, someone of the LGBTQ community is kind of fighting for rights. It's not just like our rights, it's really like this big picture. And so just I think taking that step back as humans, and realizing that a lot of the movement that was made by the LGBTQ community hasn't just benefited. And we talk about like DEI programs being cut. Yes, we see that initially as us as our LGBTQ identity, but then we also see it as our racial identity. But it doesn't stop there. And I think when people understand that everybody suffers when those type of programs are at risk, will we really, really shift our thought and understand that, having as many different opinions, and almost going back to that idea of, when you're able to see outside the box, when you're able to see other perspectives and create policies and jobs and small profits, I mean, small businesses, with this mindset that diversity really is good for the whole, then we can maybe be in a better place. But right now it's a difficult time for a lot of us, and some of us in more ways than one.
There's no question that it's affected Pride Month this year, and yet events are still happening. Maybe the parades have been scaled back a little bit, but the flame is not just like alive. I mean, it's out there, it's roaring still in a lot of places, and you just have to you have to get past the hype, I think about it. So just as an example, Kappa, we sponsor with a bunch of different partners more than 12 different stock exchanges around the world, ringing the bell for LGBTI inclusion. I mean, this is like a resounding statement coming from outside the US. But after all, this is like we are in a global economy, so this is highly relevant for us. Surveys suggest that still only maybe half of the companies in the U.S. responding to the one survey I saw that they are cutting back on their DEI efforts. So it's not something that's happening everywhere, but it's gotten a lot of press. So I think we still have you know, we still have the ability to keep pushing back on that. But I think we have to go back to some of our old tactics. We didn't get these policies because companies woke up one morning and said, "Oh, the LGBTI market." That's not what happened. I mean, that was there, but really it was the employees within those companies who said, "You are not treating us fairly. We want, you know, the same right to be free of discrimination, the same kinds of benefits that everybody else gets, you know, the same kind of treatment. You know, we're not asking for anything more than what everybody else already has." So I think, you know, there are going to be, I think we're going to start seeing more of that in the future, more pushback.
Is this funding crunch that's happening for LGBTQ organizations, for positions in institutions that focus on LGBTQI plus issues. And that, of course, is being led in no small part by the federal administration itself in cutting off NIH funding, which there was a wonderful ruling this week that it put a hold on Trump's order to withhold NIH funding, or the order from the NIH to withhold funding regarding certain subjects, and LGBTQ issues is one of them. But of course, that's just one of many funding streams that is being assaulted, and that is just through the executive, not even counting the Republican Congress that is also undertaking efforts right now, and it is of course notable that many corporations have rejected anti-DEI proposals, shareholder proposals. And there's a wonderful list that HRC has released of entities that rejected those proposals. But they are in many ways still backing away from many pride parades and public sponsorship. New York City and SF Pride reported significant loss of funding sources, and that loss of revenue is significant for them. Interestingly, though, Boston Pride for the People, which just hosted their Pride this last weekend, did not suffer similar losses, and they attribute that to their reliance on actually their local economy and smaller contributors instead of corporate support, as well as by thoroughly vetting their contributors in the past, so that they had actually eliminated those who made anti-LGBTQ contributions to political causes and were seen as potential false friends. So it's a very interesting moment.